Hello. Today I'm going to be reading chapter 24 of Takeout by Margaret Maron. And also, I don't know why. I must have picked the wrong time when I was scheduling my video, but um I saw that chapter 23 came out before chapter 21 or 22 today still. So I just wanted to say that. I don't know why, but it did. So yeah, but Chapter 24 of Takeout by Margaret Maron. As she let herself into the house, Sigrid heard her housemate say, "Hold on a moment, let me find a pencil." She went down the short entrance hall to their kitchen and found Roman rummaging for a pencil in a drawer beneath the wall phone. "Ah, you're back. It's a Dr. Reddish." The name was vaguely familiar, but she couldn't think in what context. Roman handed her the phone and went back to stirring something on the stove. Something that smelled deliciously of browned garlic and a whiff of rosemary. "Dr. Reddish, this is Sigurd Harold." "Oh, good," a youthful voice exclaimed. "Ms. Harold, I mean, Lieutenant Harold. I'm the new director at the Brule House. I hope you don't mind that I got your number from Dr. Buntrock. Did he happen to mention me?" "Actually, he did. I believe he said you were once a student of his. I'm calling about Roger Chambly's murder. They tell me here that you handled the investigation." "Yes. How can I help you?" "I know it's a long shot, but my assistant is under the impression that Dr. Chambly might have found something significant in the house just before he was killed. Did you hear that too?" "It was mentioned, but I have no idea what it was." She hesitated. Unless? I don't know if it was significant or not, but there was a docent there. A Miss Beardy? Miss Beardsley? That's right. She seemed to know every item in the house. An embroidered pink satin item was found in Chambly's briefcase. It looked rather like an envelope. Miss Beardsley said it was Miss Brule's glove case, but when she took us to where it was usually kept, it turned out to be a duplicate. She was quite surprised that there were two. We didn't take it, so it's probably still there in the house." "It was empty?" "I'm afraid so, but it did look as if it had held something long enough to leave an impression. It could have been a small book or a jeweler's box for a bracelet. Who knows? It didn't come from Sophie Brule's room, though. I remember that it had a musty smell, maybe from the attic where Chambly was working. You could ask Miss Beardsley." "Of course I can," thought Dorothy Reddish after she had thanked Lieutenant Harold and hung up. Even though it was after 6 o'clock, Miss Beardsley was probably still here in the house somewhere. She rather suspected that the woman thought of this place as her own personal life-size dollhouse. Several years ago, someone had donated jointed mannequins from a going-out-of-business clothing store, and Mrs. Beardsley treated them as stand-ins for the Brule family and their servants, circa 1890. A female figure stood with her hand on the banister of a curved staircase, as if coming down to join the male figure who waited below. Eric and Sophie Brule. Miss Beardsley changed their clothing every month. Here in June, Sophie wore a flowery dress of cotton batiste. Eric was jaunty in a lightweight linen suit and a straw boater with a red and white striped hatband, as if he were about to walk out the front door for a stroll up the avenue. The police had returned his ebony walking stick, but that was for winter. For June, Miss Beardsley had brought out his bamboo cane. Upstairs in the playroom, Eric Brule Jr. would be dressed in a white sailor suit, a little boy who never grew up. A child so adored by his mother had a child so adored that his mother had saved all his clothes. Reddish had to keep reminding herself that Eric Jr. did, in fact, grow up. Upon finishing college in 1912, he left for a wanderer in Europe, where he was struck and killed by a team of runaway horses in a narrow Paris street. He was not quite 22. She had read the heartbroken entries in Sophie's diaries and ached for Eric Sr.'s grief. But what was Chambly doing with Sophie's glove case? She stepped out into the great hall and found Miss Beardsley staring at the male mannequin. The older woman gave a guilty laugh, as if embarrassed to have been caught unaware. I know it's silly of me, but I've been trying to decide if Mr. Brule should have a buttonhole. A what? A, a boutonniere. That's what they would have called it back then. Or would it make him look too much like a dandy, which I'm quite sure he was not? Oh, I don't know, Reddish said. Maybe it was something his wife liked. Now that's an idea, Miss Beardsley exclaimed. I shall move Sophie closer to the railing and let her be handing him a daisy or a rosebud, and he can be reaching up for it. Isn't it lucky that these mannequins are so nicely jointed? Gives us so many staging possibilities. The royal us, thought Reddish, as if any of the other Dokins would dare move these two figures. I wonder if you can help me, she said. Lieutenant Harold tells me that a glove case was found in Dr. Chambly's briefcase after he was killed. Where would I find it? In the attic, the woman replied promptly, and immediately started up the stairs. We were all so surprised to learn that there were two glove cases, and we surmised that Mr. Brule must have used it to keep some private reminder of his wife after her death. So rather than leave it with Sophie's other things, I put it back in the attic. Reddish dutifully followed her up the several flights to the attic, where she herself had begun going through the records of Eric Brule's shipping company. We gave Dr. Chambly the use of Eric Jr.'s desk that was stored up here when we redid the playroom. You, of course, are using the desk Eric Sr. used. She made it sound as if she hoped Reddish appreciated the privilege. Slightly panting as they entered the fourth-floor attic, she opened a lower drawer of this smaller oak desk and brought out a flat cardboard gift box. Inside, now carefully wrapped in tissue paper, was the embroidered pink satin glove case that Lieutenant Harold had described. It was faded and discolored on the edges. I wanted to have it cleaned and restored, said Miss Beardsley, but then I thought that perhaps it was best to leave it as it was in the case, in case we ever found whatever it was that it used to hold. With her fingers, Reddish traced the outlines of the impression. Something about 2 inches thick that measured approximately 9 by 4 inches. And you have no idea what that might be? Not at all. True regret lay in Miss Beardsley's voice. But it was so chaotic back then, with police all over the house from attic to basement, and making wicked accusations. Reddish looked around. Here near the stairs, space had been cleared for the desk, a swivel chair, and a floor lamp. 2 file cabinets stood nearby. Stretching far back under the rafters were bulky shapes draped in dust cloths, pieces of furniture unwanted and no longer needed downstairs. Has all that furniture been catalogued and evaluated? She said, she asked. I'm afraid so, Dr. Reddish. Like you, our former director hoped to find something that could be sold without diminishing the holdings of the house. Unfortunately, and this is where Dr. Shambly worked while updating his history of the house. He was everywhere, said Mrs. Beardsley with remembered annoyance. Not to speak ill of the dead, but he was such an unpleasant little man. He'd wave his hand for you to get out of his way, and then push right past you if you didn't move fast enough to suit him. Nobody here mourned him, I can tell you. But yes, this is where he worked. We have no idea where he found that second glove case. It certainly wasn't in the desk. Maybe in the file cabinets. Dorothy Reddish sighed as she opened one of the drawers. Although each folder was neatly labeled in some long-dead secretary's Spencerian script, the files that she had examined all had to do with the early founding of the Brule fortune, which began with 3 leaky river barges and the opening of the Erie Canal back in the 1820s. A second fortune came from running blockades during the Civil War. From there, the Brules had moved into banking and investments, and the bulk of those records had probably gone with the company when it was sold after Eric Sr.'s death. The documents here seem to be from that simpler beginning and may have been kept for sentimental reasons. They tracked the transport of manufactured products like tools and yard goods going west, and raw materials like lumber and barrels of apples coming east. It wasn't quite her field, thought Reddish, but it might be possible to put together an exhibit showing the contributions made to American industry and westward expansion by the Brules, assuming she could keep the house open that long. And that's the end of chapter 24, and I will see you all tomorrow, and as always, have a wonderful day.